It was a scorching afternoon in the middle of nowhere. The sun hung high in the sky, baking the earth with its relentless heat. I was cruising down the empty highway, the hum of my truck the only sound, when I spotted a car pulled over on the side of the road. A sleek silver sedan, the kind that screamed luxury, its hood popped open like it was begging for help. I slowed down, not expecting to find anyone in need of assistance in such a desolate stretch of road, but I couldn't ignore it. There was a woman standing beside the car, her long, dark hair cascading over her shoulders, her face contorted in frustration. She looked like she was about to lose her mind, a far cry from the kind of person you'd expect to see stranded out here. I rolled to a stop, the gravel crunching under my tires, and leaned out the window. "Need some help?" I asked, my voice carrying in the heat. She turned towards me, her expression softening as she recognized I wasn't just another passerby. "Actually, yes. My car's broken down, and I don't know what to do. I'm so far from the nearest service station." I gave a nod and climbed out of my truck. The woman stepped forward as I approached, her eyes scanning me briefly, almost calculating, but it didn't faze me. "Let's take a look," I said, and motioned toward the engine. She hesitated for a moment, then agreed, walking over to the hood. Her heels clicked sharply on the asphalt, and I couldn't help but notice the brand-new, expensive-looking watch around her wrist. As I crouched down to inspect the engine, she stayed quiet, watching me with an air of detached curiosity. I could tell she wasn't used to having to rely on anyone, especially not out here in the middle of nowhere. I cracked open the engine compartment and immediately spotted the problem, a busted belt that had snapped under the pressure of the heat. I muttered under my breath, more to myself than her. "This isn't something I can fix on the spot without the right parts, but I can get you to a shop in town. It's not far from here." She sighed in relief, her posture relaxing a little. "Thank you," she said, her voice a little softer now. "I didn't think anyone would stop." I waved it off with a half-smile, "It's nothing." I took a few steps back, scratching my head as I surveyed the situation. The busted belt would need to be replaced, and my truck wasn't exactly the best for hauling a car like hers. Still, I figured I could help her get to the next town and figure it out from there. She started rummaging through her purse, pulling out a few bills to offer me for the trouble. I waved my hand, declining the money. "No need," I said. "You're good." Her expression flickered for a moment, as if she was deciding whether to press me further. She finally settled on simply nodding, though I could see the questions lingering in her eyes. "You sure? You've helped me out a lot." "It's the least I could do." Her voice had a softness to it that was at odds with the hardened, self-assured look she wore. "I don't need anything in return," I said with a shrug, then gestured toward my truck. "I'll just pull up behind you, and we'll head out." She nodded, looking over her shoulder at her car, a subtle hesitation in her posture. As she did, the sunlight caught something around her neck, something gold that reflected a bright gleam. At first, I thought it was just a piece of jewelry, but as I looked closer, I realized it was a necklace. A hefty, ornate gold medallion. The kind of necklace that looked like it belonged to someone who knew exactly how to get attention. The woman caught me looking and, in an almost imperceptible move, she tugged at it with one hand, pulling it slightly out of view beneath her shirt. I hadn't meant to stare, but there was something about the necklace that didn't quite sit right with me. She caught my glance again, and her lips quirked up just slightly. "What's that?" I asked without thinking, my curiosity getting the better of me. I quickly realized how it sounded, and added, "I mean, it's a beautiful piece." She smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was a knowing one. A smile that said she was well aware of the effect she had on people, and that this was no accident. "It's a family heirloom," she replied smoothly. "You could say it's priceless." The way she said it, like she had no idea how much that particular phrase intrigued me, made me wonder if there was more to her than just a simple breakdown. But instead of asking further, I simply nodded. "All right," I said, trying to keep the conversation light. Let's get you back on the road. We both got in our vehicles, her sedan still resting on the side of the road, and my truck waiting to guide her to safety. I pulled up behind her, the gravel crunching under my tires as I aligned myself to her bumper, ready to tow her if need be. The air between us felt charged, but not in a way I could put my finger on. It wasn't tension, exactly. More like something unspoken, something lurking in the space between our words. As she shifted her car into drive, I followed her, making sure to stay close. The road stretched on, endless and empty, surrounded by stretches of barren land. The heat of the day still hung in the air, but the sun was dipping, casting long shadows that made the landscape look like something out of an old Western film. I glanced over at her as she drove. She seemed to be lost in thought, eyes fixed straight ahead. I couldn't help but steal another look at her necklace. It glinted in the fading light, still hidden beneath her shirt but unmistakable in its presence. It wasn't like any jewelry I'd ever seen. No, this piece had history. It wasn't until we reached the small town that the silence between us finally broke. We stopped in front of a mechanic's shop, a dingy little place with a faded sign and a few rusted cars parked out front. She put the car in park and turned to me, a hint of something calculating in her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her tone sincere now, though there was still a sense of distance between us. "You really saved me today." I gave a simple nod. "No problem. Glad I could help." Her gaze lingered on me for a moment longer than expected, as if she were weighing something in her mind. Then, without warning, she reached for her purse and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the dashboard to me. "Take this," she said. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out." I glanced at the card, noting the sleek design and the name that stood out in bold lettering, Elizabeth Price, CEO. It hit me then, the aura she carried wasn't just from her wealth, she had power. She wasn't just any random stranger stranded on the side of the road. She was someone of importance. I gave a half smile, taking the card from her. "Thanks. But I'm not really the type to ask for favors." She chuckled softly, the sound almost musical. "You'd be surprised how often things come up. Especially when you least expect them." I pocketed the card, feeling a strange unease settling in my gut. There was something about her that didn't sit right, something beyond the expensive car, the jewelry, the business card. I had a feeling I'd be seeing her again, whether I wanted to or not. A few days passed after our brief encounter, and I almost convinced myself I had overthought the whole thing. I didn't expect to hear from her again. Why would I? She was a wealthy businesswoman with a life that probably didn't involve small-time folks like me. But then, on the fourth night after the breakdown, my phone buzzed. I checked the screen and froze for a second. The caller ID read, Elizabeth Price. I hesitated for just a moment before answering. "Hello," I said, trying to sound casual, though my mind was racing. "Hi, it's Elizabeth," came her voice, smooth and confident as ever. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." I leaned back in my chair, a little more on edge than I expected. "No, you're fine. What's up?" There was a slight pause before she spoke again. "I need your help with something. It's a bit unusual." I raised an eyebrow. "Unusual? What do you mean?" "Let's just say it involves something I'd rather not involve the authorities in," she said, her tone dropping to a more serious register. "I've run into a bit of a situation, and I could use someone I trust, or someone who doesn't know me too well, to be honest." I could feel the weight of her words, the underlying implication that whatever this was, it wasn't simple. "I'm listening," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. She exhaled softly. "I need you to come to my office. There's something you need to see. And something you need to do." Something about the way she said it, the urgency, the secrecy, made me feel like I'd just stepped into a world I didn't fully understand. But I also couldn't deny the pull. There was something magnetic about her, and against my better judgment, I agreed. All right. I'll be there in an hour. I arrived at Elizabeth Price's office just as the sun was dipping below the horizon, casting a deep orange glow against the tall, sleek glass buildings that lined the street. The city was alive, bustling, but I felt like I was stepping into a different world entirely when I walked through the polished glass doors of her building. The lobby was nothing short of impressive. Marble floors, expensive art on the walls, and a minimalistic design that screamed money and power. I approached the reception desk, and the young woman behind it barely looked up as I said my name. "She's expecting you," she said, her voice cold, but not unfriendly. I was escorted to an elevator, which whisked me up to the top floor. Elizabeth's office was as extravagant as everything else, the walls lined with bookshelves filled with rare books, dark wood furniture polished to a perfect shine, and large windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city below. Elizabeth stood by the window, gazing out at the skyline. She didn't turn when I entered, but her posture was rigid, like she was holding something in, something weighing heavy on her. "I'm glad you came," she said, her voice low but firm. "Please, sit down." I took a seat across from her, feeling the tension between us. There was something about her demeanor now that was different from the woman I had helped days earlier. The air in the room had shifted, and I could almost taste it: danger, secrecy, and maybe even fear. Elizabeth finally turned to face me. Her eyes were intense, her usual calm replaced by something deeper. "There's something I need you to understand," she began, walking over to a nearby desk and pulling out a file. "This isn't just about a breakdown on the side of the road. It's about a lot more than that." She handed me the file, and I glanced at the first page. It was a mix of legal documents, photographs, and cryptic notes that made little sense at first glance. My heart started to race. "What's all this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Those are the files of my family's business," she said, the words hanging in the air like a heavy weight. "And they're about to become very dangerous. It's more than just money, more than just power. It's a legacy." I flipped through the pages, the images catching my eye, old photos of her family, but in the background, I noticed something strange. There was a particular symbol, a mark that seemed to match the design of her necklace. It clicked in my mind. "Your necklace. It's part of this?" I asked, unable to keep the words from slipping out. She nodded slowly, the corners of her mouth tightening as she looked at me. "Yes. And that's why I need your help. I can't do this alone." I sat back in my chair, trying to process everything she had just said. There were too many pieces of the puzzle, and none of them fit together yet. The files, the symbol, the necklace, it was all tied together somehow, but how? Elizabeth watched me closely, her gaze never leaving my face, as if she was waiting for me to make a decision. There was a pause, a stillness in the air that was almost suffocating. Finally, I broke the silence. "What exactly do you need me to do?" She took a deep breath, her fingers brushing lightly over the edge of the desk, like she was gathering her thoughts. "I need someone who isn't connected to my world. Someone outside of all the politics, the money, the power. Someone who doesn't have a stake in this game. That's where you come in." I frowned. "But why me? I'm just a guy who helped you on the side of the road." Elizabeth gave a soft chuckle, but it didn't feel genuine. It was more like a laugh born out of frustration. "I can't go to the authorities. I can't go to anyone within my circle. This has been hidden for generations. If the wrong people find out what I know, it could ruin everything." She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "What's in that file is connected to the legacy of my family's wealth, something they don't want getting out. The medallion, the symbol, it's all part of it. I need you to help me figure out how to stop it from being exposed." I could feel the weight of her words, the desperation in her eyes. She wasn't just worried about losing her fortune, she was terrified of something far worse. I looked down at the file again, trying to make sense of it all. There were mention of ancient artifacts, family secrets, and organizations with too much power. My gut told me this wasn't something I could walk away from. If I did, I'd probably regret it for the rest of my life. You're not just talking about money here, I said slowly, my voice even. You're talking about something bigger. Something dangerous. Elizabeth nodded. Yes. There are forces at play, ones that have been operating for generations. And now, they're closing in on me. On us. The way she said, us, struck me. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about a much larger, more dangerous game, and I was being pulled into the center of it. All right, I said, feeling the decision settle in my chest. I'm in. But you need to tell me everything. No more secrets. Her eyes softened for just a moment, a flicker of something genuine before the mask slipped back into place. I knew you'd say that. She stood up, walking to the other side of the room and opening a drawer in the desk. She pulled out a small, intricately carved box and placed it in front of me. This, she said, her voice barely audible, is the key. The answer to everything we need to know. But only if we can figure out how to unlock it. I reached out and picked up the box, feeling the weight of it in my hands. It was beautiful, made of dark wood, with the same symbol from the necklace etched into the surface. But the real mystery lay in the fact that it was locked tight, with no visible keyhole. What's inside? I asked, feeling the chill of curiosity crawl up my spine. Elizabeth's eyes locked with mine, her expression serious. I don't know, she said softly. But I have a feeling it's something we both need to find out. I held the box in my hands, feeling its weight, its mystery pressing against my palms. The intricate carvings were more than just decorative, they felt purposeful, like they were meant to tell a story, to guide me toward something. Something I couldn't yet understand. Elizabeth stood by, her eyes locked on the box, as if she were waiting for me to figure it out. The silence between us was thick, suffocating, like the room itself was holding its breath. I tried to open it, but it didn't budge. There was no obvious lock, no keyhole, just a smooth surface. My fingers traced the edges, following the pattern of the carving, but nothing happened. Do you know what it is? I asked, glancing up at her. How do we open it? She shook her head slowly, her expression tight with frustration. I've never been able to figure it out. It's been in my family for generations, passed down as part of our legacy. It's supposed to hold something important. Something that could change everything. I placed the box back down on the desk, trying to keep my focus, trying not to let the weight of her words crush me. I wasn't equipped for whatever this was. I was just a guy who had helped her with a broken car. I rubbed my temples, trying to think. There had to be something I was missing. You said the symbol on the medallion is tied to this. Maybe there's a connection between the two. Elizabeth nodded. That's what I thought, too. But I've tried every possible connection, nothing works. I stared at the box again, focusing on the carving, hoping to see something new, something I hadn't noticed before. The symbol, the same one from her necklace, seemed to shimmer in the dim light of the office, almost as if it was alive. The edges seemed to move when I stared too long. Then, it hit me. The box wasn't just locked. It was waiting for something. It was waiting for a trigger, something specific. I stood up, grabbing the medallion from beneath her shirt before she could react. She didn't stop me, just watched as I held the gold piece in my hand, its surface gleaming in the light. I held the medallion up to the box, aligning the symbol on both. And that's when it happened. The box clicked. A small section of the lid shifted, revealing a faint glowing light. I could feel my pulse quicken as I lifted the lid, revealing a set of old, yellowed papers and a small, intricately detailed key. The key seemed to pulse with an energy that sent a chill through my fingertips. Elizabeth's breath caught behind me as she stepped closer. Her voice was barely a whisper. That's it. That's the key, I picked up the key carefully, my hands trembling slightly. It felt like it had a life of its own, its weight, its heat, its power. "What is this?" I asked, my voice low, filled with awe and confusion. "What does it unlock?" Elizabeth's gaze didn't leave the key. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak right away. Finally, she said, "It unlocks the truth." She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and fear. "And once you know the truth, there's no turning back." I held the key in my hand, staring at it, feeling the weight of it in a way that seemed far beyond the physical. This wasn't just some old relic, it felt like it had been waiting for me, just like the box. And now that it was in my grasp, there was no turning back. Elizabeth's eyes were fixed on the key, her face a mask of both anticipation and dread. "The truth," she whispered again, as though speaking the words made it all the more real. "You have no idea how long my family has protected this. The secrets we've kept buried for generations." I looked down at the papers in the box, hesitant to move them. The key seemed to pulse in my hand, as though urging me to take the next step. But I couldn't help the question that hung in the air. "What's on those papers?" I asked. "What are you really asking me to do, Elizabeth?" She hesitated before answering, her voice shaky. "It's not just about family wealth. It's not about power, either. Those papers, they detail a secret society, an ancient order that has existed for centuries. They've been the ones pulling the strings all along, the ones who created the medallion, the symbol." I felt a knot form in my stomach. "You mean, this group has been controlling everything from behind the scenes? All this time?" Elizabeth nodded slowly. "Yes. And my family, we've been tied to them. But now, someone else has discovered the truth. Someone dangerous. And they're after what's inside those papers. The truth. And with it, they'll have control over everything we've worked to keep hidden." I took a step back, trying to process everything she had just revealed. The weight of her words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. This wasn't just about a breakdown on the road. This wasn't just about helping a stranger. This was about something far darker and far more dangerous. "I didn't sign up for this," I said, my voice shaking with the gravity of the situation. Elizabeth's eyes softened, and she reached out, gently placing a hand on my arm. "I never wanted this for you. I never wanted anyone else involved. But now, I'm asking you for help, because you're the only one I can trust." She glanced down at the key in my hand, then back up at me. "You're already part of this now. Whether you like it or not." I felt the room spin as I realized the truth she was talking about. The key was the answer, but it also meant that I was in too deep to back out now. "Tell me what I need to do," I said, my voice steady now despite the terror swirling inside me. Elizabeth's lips parted as she began to speak, but just as she did, there was a loud noise at the door, a knock, sharp and urgent. We both froze. The knock repeated, louder this time, followed by the sound of the door handle rattling. Elizabeth's eyes widened in panic. "They found us." I didn't have to ask who they were. I could see it in her eyes, the truth was here, and it was going to destroy us both if we didn't act fast. I slid the key into my pocket, the weight of it now pressing on me in a new way. Elizabeth grabbed the papers from the box and shoved them into my hands. "Go," she hissed. "Get out of here. Do whatever it takes to protect those papers. You're our only chance." Before I could respond, she rushed to the window, peeking through the blinds. Her face went pale as she saw something I couldn't. "They're outside," she said, her voice trembling. "We don't have much time." The door burst open just as I turned to leave. Two figures, their faces obscured by dark masks, stormed into the room. "Give us the key," one of them growled, pointing directly at me. I froze, the papers burning a hole in my hands, my heart hammering in my chest. The choice was clear. I could hand over the key and let them take it, or I could fight, risk everything to keep the truth buried. I ran. I ran, not knowing where to, but I knew one thing for sure, I couldn't let the truth out. Not yet. Not while I still had a chance to make things right.